Welcome to the deep dive, where we really try to break down dense research and pull out the insights you can actually use. Today, we're digging into something fascinating: the surprising secrets of America's wealthy. We're looking specifically at a book that honestly turned a lot of thinking about money on its head. It's The Millionaire Next Door, the 1996 classic by Thomas Stanley and William Danko.
Yeah, it really did make waves back then.
Totally. I mean, when it first came out, the big finding was genuinely a shocker. The stereotype was always the fancy cars, the mansions, Beverly Hills.
Right, the high-profile spenders.
Exactly. But the research showed something else. It found that actual American millionaires, people with real net worth, well, they're disproportionately clustered in, normal middle-class neighborhoods.
Even blue-collar areas sometimes. It was about quiet accumulation, not flashy consumption, and that behavioral insight. That's really why the book hit so hard. It just flipped the script on common assumptions. So our mission today, really, is to get into the weeds on that behavioral difference, the difference between folks who just earn a high income versus those who actually build lasting wealth.
Because they're definitely not the same thing.
No,
But that distinction is crucial here: high income versus high net worth. And the authors gave us a couple of key terms, right, to help us understand this contrast.
Yeah, we need to define the players, basically. So first, you've got the underaccumulators of wealth. We'll call them UAWs. These are people often with really good incomes, but their net worth is surprisingly low compared to what they earn. They're the high earners spending pretty much everything.
Okay, the UAWs, got it. And the other side?
That's the prodigious accumulators of wealth, or PAWs. Now, these are the folks who are really effective, disciplined wealth builders. They accumulate way more than you typically expect based on their age and their income.
So these are the people living in those, average houses, but sitting on quiet fortunes.
Exactly. Those are your PAWs.
Okay. And the authors even gave us a way to sort of measure this, didn't they? A rule of thumb.
They did. It's a pretty simple calculation, actually. You take your age, multiply that by your realized pre-tax annual household income. And that means the income you actually get, deposited.
Right, not just what your salary says on paper.
Precisely. So age times realized income. Then you divide that whole thing by 10. And that number, that result, that should be your net worth, which, is just what you own minus what you owe. Simple assets minus liabilities.
Okay, let's make that concrete. An example might help.
Sure.
Say a 50-year-old doctor, high earner, making $250,000 a year.
Okay.
So 50 times $250,000, that's $12.5 million, divide by 10.
That gives you $1.25 million.
Right. So according to this rule of thumb, that doctor should have a net worth of about $1.25 million. If they have significantly less than that, even with that big income, they're an underaccumulator, a UAW.
Exactly. It really highlights that the behavior, the accumulation habits, that's the key ingredient. It's not just about the size of the paycheck.
Okay, so let's unpack that PAW profile then, with the prodigious accumulators. If you had to boil it all down, what's the absolute core principle, the main behavior driving their success?
It's almost anticlimactic how simple it is. The number one reason is they live significantly below their means.
Huh. Just like that.
That's the foundation. Everything else builds on that. They see money differently. It's not just something to spend once you get it. It's more like a seed, something to plant and grow. They focus on maximizing wealth that grows quietly, often in ways that aren't immediately taxed or visible.
Yeah.
Keeping it away from consumer urges.
It really is the oldest advice in the financial book, isn't it? Live below your means.
It is.
And yet, clearly the hardest thing to actually do in our society.
Seems that way.
The sources lay out, I think it was 7 common traits for these PAWs. Can we run through that playbook?
Absolutely. Yeah. So number 1 is living below their means. We covered that. Number 2, they're really efficient with their resources. They allocate their time, their energy, their money efficiently, specifically towards building wealth.
Okay.
3, they value financial independence way more than displaying high social status. Big one.
That seems key.
It is. 4 and 5 are interesting, related to family. They generally didn't receive regular cash gifts or support from their parents when they were starting out.
No economic outpatient care, as the book calls it.
Right. We'll come back to EOC.
Yeah.
And relatedly, their own adult children tend to be economically self-sufficient. They don't perpetuate dependency.
Fascinating. Okay, what else?
6, they're adept at targeting market opportunities. They see potential where others might not. And 7, kind of foundational too. They chose the right occupation, often one that allows for wealth accumulation, maybe self-employment or business ownership.
That point about valuing financial independence over displaying status, That feels like the central conflict of the whole book, doesn't it?
It really is. Paws just fundamentally reject the typical consumer script.
How does that show up in their spending?
Well, they spend very little on things that lose value quickly, especially status symbols. Think new cars, fancy watches, designer clothes. They understand that buying status is just this treadmill. It's a never-ending cycle of spending on depreciating assets that just drains your net worth.
The book has that great contrast on car shopping. It really highlights the difference.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
So the typical UAW, the underaccumulator, they want the brand new car, right? Latest model.
Usually financed too. Lots of debt.
Right. And they'll spend like 60 hours researching, negotiating, trying to get a good deal on this.
That starts losing value the second they drive it off the
Right.
lot.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the paw.
The paw almost never buys a brand new current model car. They've run the numbers. They see that, say, $20,000 difference between a new one and a reliable, slightly older model. That's not just $20,000 saved. That's $20,000 they can invest.
It's an opportunity cost calculation.
Totally. They're choosing decades of potential financial growth and flexibility over a few months of that new car smell and status pride.
Which leads us right into the mindset of the UAWs, the underaccumulators. Their core problem seems to be this philosophy of, well, spending tomorrow's cash today.
That's spot on. It's the root cause for so much debt and just stagnant net worth, even with high incomes. And it seems to be driven by a couple of powerful social theories the book identifies.
Right, the consumption theories.
Yeah. The first one is the better than theory. This suggests that people tend to measure their own success by comparing themselves to their nearest neighbors, their closest relatives, their peer group.
So if you're a high earner and you get a raise,
Your perceived needs also rise. You feel this pressure, maybe subconscious, maybe not, to consume more. You need the bigger patio, the fancier vacation.
just to keep pace or ideally slightly outperform the people around you. It's like a social arms race, funded by consumption.
Precisely. And then there's the related better off theory. This one often clicks with UAWs, who maybe grew up with less financial security, but then achieved a high-income profession.
Ah, okay, so they feel this drive.
A compulsion, almost, to be visibly better off than their parents were. And in our society, that often translates to a checklist of possessions.
Right.
The big house, maybe in a prestigious zip code, the respectable degree framed on the wall, the imported luxury car, maybe a boat, a country club membership.
All the symbols.
All the symbols. They end up measuring their success by these visible markers, even if acquiring them makes them financially fragile, despite that high income.
It sounds like underlying all this is a belief that the money will just keep coming, no matter what.
That's a huge part of it. Many UAWs seem to operate on this assumption that money is the most easily renewable resource. They see their high salary or professional income as almost guaranteed, indefinitely.
Which makes spending now feel totally okay.
Right. Why save sacrificially if you believe you can always just generate more money later? They prioritize today's satisfaction, today's status boost, over the quiet power of long-term compounding growth.
And this mindset feeds directly into what the authors called million-dollar choices.
Ah, yes.
These aren't big one-off decisions necessarily. They're the small, habitual, everyday spending choices.
That add up over decades and quietly sabotage any chance of building serious wealth.
The book uses a really striking anecdote for this. Mr. Friend's parents, was it?
Yeah, the cigarette example
Yeah.
is powerful. They talk about the parents of this high-earning guy, Mr. Friend, and his parents smoked, I think it was 3 packs of cigarettes a day.
Wow, 3 packs. That's a lot, but probably not unheard of for that generation.
Right. Seems like a standard, if unhealthy, expense.
Okay, but what's the financial impact, the million-dollar choice part?
Get this. The authors calculated that if the Friends had taken the money they spent on cigarettes over 46 years and instead invested it consistently, reinvesting the dividends and growth, that final portfolio after 46 years would have been worth over $2 million.
For $1 million from cigarettes.
Over $2 million. That seemingly small, habitual expense, the thing you just dismiss as walking around money,
Right.
it ended up being worth more than their family home by about $33,000, according to the book.
That's genuinely stunning.
It really shows how these consistent, maybe even marginal-seeming spending choices become enormous liabilities over a lifetime.
It tells you the real battle for wealth isn't always won with brilliant stock picks. It's won or lost in those daily habits.
That's exactly right. Day in, day out discipline.
So let's pivot slightly to this income-wealth paradox. We touched on it, but the book really hammers this point. There's this indirect relationship often between having a high income and actually accumulating high net worth.
Right.
And the sources specifically call out professions like doctors, lawyers, dentists, saying they have a high concentration of UAWs.
Yeah, the numbers were pretty stark. Professionals like doctors were found to be about twice as likely to be under-accumulators, UAWs, compared to prodigious accumulators.
Pause. Okay, wait. If these high-income professionals are more likely to be UAWs, doesn't that just blow up the whole idea that more income equals more wealth-building potential?
It seems to, right?
Yeah.
But the book offers a couple of key reasons for this paradox. First, there's the delayed start. Think about it. Doctors, lawyers, they often need advanced degrees.
Right, years of extra schooling.
Years of expensive tuition, living costs, often racking up significant student loan debt. So they're starting their earning, and therefore they're accumulating, maybe a decade or more later than someone who started a salary job right out of undergrad.
That makes sense. They're behind from the start. What's the second reason?
The second reason ties right back into that social pressure we talked about, the better-than theory. American society, rightly or wrongly, sort of prescribes a high-consumption lifestyle for these respected professions.
Ah, the expectations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're expected to live in the upscale neighborhood. You're expected to drive a certain kind of car, maybe multiple nice cars, own a boat, buy luxury goods. It's like they feel this pressure to consume in a way that signals, yes, I have arrived, I've earned this title, even if it comes at the expense of their actual net worth.
So the status signaling overrides the wealth building.
Often, yes. And this inversion of priorities shows up in how they manage their time too, particularly around investments.
How so?
Well, the PAWs, the quiet wealth builders, they actually spend a decent amount of time thinking about and managing their investments. The research found it was about 53 minutes per day on average.
53 minutes a day. Wow, that adds up.
It does. It's over 324 hours a year dedicated to planning, reviewing, making sure their money's working for them.
Okay, and the high-income UAWs, the doctors and lawyers?
They spend on average about 9 minutes a day on their investments.
9 minutes compared to 53.
Yep. That's just 55 hours a year. It's like 83% less time focused on their portfolio.
And yet, didn't we just say the UAW might spend 60 hours researching a car purchase, which loses value?
Exactly. The priorities are flipped. They'll dedicate huge amounts of time to consumption decisions, especially status-related ones, but very little time to the thing that actually builds long-term wealth.
That's illogical.
It seems that way from a pure wealth-building perspective. They also tend to be quite risk-averse when it comes to investing, paradoxically.
How does that work? They take the risk of high debt for consumption, but not for investment.
Kind of. Many UAWs keep a surprisingly large portion of their wealth, maybe 20% or more, in cash or very safe, low-yield cash equivalents.
Why? For emergencies?
Partly, but also just to have ready access to funds for, well, more consumption.
Mm-hmm.
When those inevitable urges hit, or social pressures demand a purchase, they want the cash on hand. Liquidity for spending trumps potential growth.
Okay.
And this lack of engagement and confidence makes them, particularly doctors and lawyers, kind of vulnerable, doesn't it?
Vulnerable how?
To things like cold callers, overly persuasive brokers selling high-commission products, people who exploit their lack of time, and frankly, sometimes their lack of financial knowledge or confidence.
Ah, I see. The book had that anecdote about Mr. Willis, right? The Walmart executive.
In the Mr. Willis story, yeah, that's a painful illustration of how risk aversion can cost you big time.
What happened there?
Well, Mr. Willis worked at Walmart during a period of absolutely explosive growth for the company. He had insider knowledge, he saw what was happening, he had the opportunity to buy company's stock at presumably favorable prices.
Okay. Sounds like a path to becoming a paw.
You'd think so. But he was apparently so nervous about investment risk, so focused on potential short-term losses.
He didn't buy.
He never bought a single share of Walmart stock during the entire 10 years he worked there.
Oh my God. He missed out on potentially millions.
Potentially enormous growth. He let fear, and maybe that need for perceived short-term safety or liquidity, completely dictate his long-term financial future. He let the big opportunity pass him by.
Wow, okay. And this UAW lifestyle, this high consumption, low accumulation approach, it doesn't just stop with the individual, does it? The book talks about it being passed down.
Yeah, that's a really crucial part of the cycle. The research suggests that children raised in a UAW household, surrounded by that high-spending, status-focused environment,
They just absorb it.
they often become even more committed believers in that system than their parents were, Even if their own income potential isn't as high, it's like an extreme version of that better off theory, trying to replicate or exceed a lifestyle they saw, regardless of their own means.
And this gets amplified by something the book calls EOC.
Right, economic outpatient care. EOC. That's the term Stanley and Danko coined for affluent parents, providing regular financial support, cash gifts, paying for mortgages, cars, grandkids' tuition to their adult children who should, theoretically, be self-sufficient.
So basically ongoing subsidies for mom and dad.
Exactly. And while it might seem generous, the book argues it fundamentally cripples the children's ability to actually build their own wealth.
Is that effect measurable? The crippling effect of EOC.
Oh yeah, it's stark. They found that adult children who receive regular EOC, get this, they have, on average, about 98% of the annual income of their peers who don't receive EOC. So income-wise, they look very similar.
Okay, almost identical income.
But
Go.
they possess only about 57% of the net worth compared to their non-subsidized peers.
Whoa, so nearly the same income, but barely half the wealth.
Exactly. That regular EOC creates this false sense of financial security. It inflates their perceived lifestyle capacity.
Meaning they feel comfortable taking on bigger financial commitments than they could actually sustain on their own earnings.
Precisely. They absorb that parental subsidy into their mental budget, so they feel fine buying the expensive house. The book noted something like 30% of families living in $300,000 homes back then were only earning $60,000 a year, often enabled by EOC.
And once you have the expensive house...
Then come the other consumption demands, right? You need the nice cars to park in the driveway, the high-end furniture, the latest tech. It fuels a whole cycle of consumption built on a shaky, subsidized foundation.
They basically consume the transferred wealth instead of investing it, and the pattern just repeats.
Exactly. They never develop those core paw muscles. Frugality, discipline, efficient resource allocation, the satisfaction of building something themselves, the EOC prevents that learning process.
Okay, this is all really compelling, but before we wrap things up, we need to add a layer of critical perspective, right?
No.
The book was hugely influential, but like any work, it's faced some criticism. We should touch on that for a balanced view.
Definitely. And probably the most significant critique revolves around the idea of survivorship bias.
Survivorship bias. Okay, how does that apply here?
Well, critics like Nassim Nicholas Taleb, known for his work on randomness and risk, pointed out a couple of things.
Yeah.
His core argument often comes back to the timing of the research. The Millionaire Next Door was published in 1996, right after one of the longest and strongest bull markets in U.S. history, basically from the early 80s through the mid-90s.
Okay, so the timing might have skewed the results. How?
The argument is that some of the impressive wealth accumulated by the paws studied in the book might have been significantly boosted by just, well, market luck, riding that massive wave.
As opposed to it being purely down to their superior behavior and discipline.
Exactly. Taleb's point, or a common critique along these lines, is twofold. First, the book highlights the winners, the paws who successfully accumulated wealth. But it doesn't really talk about people who might have followed the exact same frugal, diligent investing behaviors.
But happened to invest in assets that underperformed during that period.
Precisely. Where are the stories of the disciplined savers who just picked the wrong sectors or assets? The study focuses on the survivors, the ones whose discipline plus market conditions led to success.
Okay, that makes sense. You don't study the planes that got shot down, only the ones that made it back.
Kind of. And the second point is related. The critique suggests the authors should have perhaps tried to compensate more for the effect of those unobserved losers, or at least strongly considered how these pause strategies would have held up during really tough economic times. Like a deep recession, say 1982, or going way back to the 1930s.
Would living below your means and investing diligently still have created millionaires at the same rate in a prolonged downturn?
That's the question the survivorship bias critique raises. Success is usually some mix of skill, discipline, and fortunate timing or environment.
That's a really important piece of context to keep in mind.
It is.
But even with that caveat, the core message, that central dichotomy, it still feels incredibly powerful, doesn't it?
I think so.
The idea that building real wealth seems to be much more about rigorously controlling your consumption, being efficient with time and money, rather than just having a high income or flashing status symbols.
Yeah, the image of the real millionaire likely being the most frugal person in a pretty average neighborhood. This still resonates.
It flips the whole script.
It really does. If you connect it all back, the fundamental difference between the UAW and the PAW, the high-earning spender and the quiet wealth builder. Maybe it's less about market timing than it is about self-discipline, independence, and patience.
Prioritizing that long-term financial security over giving in to short-term social pressures or consumption urges.
That seemed to be the heart of it.
So as we leave our listeners to think about all this, maybe the final question to chew on is this. If accumulating wealth is largely about these behavioral choices, these habits,
What immediate million-dollar choice, however small it seems, could you start changing today?
thinking back to that cigarette example, those small, regular, habitual expenditures, they might be the real hidden obstacle to long-term wealth.
Recognizing that behavioral trap, that's step one, isn't it? Maybe the first step toward becoming the next millionaire next door.